Hello and welcome to the Lincoln Life Museum. Here we will be exploring a Victorian 18th century to 19th century kitchen within a middle-class family house. Assisting our exploration of the kitchen is our friend Nelson. Nelson will be demonstrating and interacting with the tools to show us how they work. Our first demonstration will be tools you can find on a kitchen table. Let us get into position, shall we? Welcome to the table. Here we can see many pieces of crockery and cutlery lying around the kitchen table. Within the kitchen we can find tools that we still use on a daily basis in our day-to-day lives, such as the common cutlery like a knife, fork and spoon, as well as a mixing bowl and chopping board. The two jars on the right of Nelson are two very unique jars. These jars contain foods that would be pickled so they could be savoured for another day. We still pickle our food, but we head to grocery stores to purchase it, whereas homes like these pickle their food to keep them for as long as possible. To Nelson's left is a wooden contraption that is used to squeeze lemons or other kind of juiced fruit. Here you would place a lemon and apply pressure on the handles. At the bottom of the lower handle are some exit holes for the juice of the lemon to pour out into a jug. The metal contraption directly in front of Nelson is quite similar to the wooden squeezer that was just demonstrated. Here you would put any fruit into the metal grating and apply pressure. Bits of the fruit, as well as the juices, will pour out of the exit holes around the lower handle. These food scales are made from a heavy cast iron metal. The bowls are made of a clear brass. We use food scales to measure our ingredients. However, in order for people to measure how much they've poured in, they would place some brass solid weights in the opposite bowl, which would count from grams to kilograms of how much you've poured in. Here we have the main attraction of the kitchen, the range. This is the reason why the kitchen was the most occupied room of the household. While the range was on, the entire room was heated, and this made it one of the warmest rooms in the household. The reason why this contraption is called a range is because it can do a multiple amount of tasks, ranging from boiling water to cooking food. That's where it gets its name from. We shall start with the coal hoarder of the range, or the fireplace. Here is where it all starts. First you will either fill the fireplace with coal or wood in order to fuel the fire. Once lit, the range is now on. While the fire burns, the fuel will break down into smaller pieces and ash. At the bottom of the fireplace is a hole. This is for the small pieces and ashes to fall through so that they won't suffocate the fire. To the right of the fireplace is a tall and large container, the water boiler. Here you would lift up the lid and pour in large amounts of water, so while the range is on, you would also be boiling water for another purpose. To the left of the fireplace is the oven. The oven, just like the rest of the range, is made of a dark cast iron body. The oven has a large iron door with a latch in order to keep all the heat inside while cooking. Atop the range is an iron shelf. This would also conduct heat from the fireplace. Here you would place metal trays and some foods to be prepared before eating or cooking further. This was also good to heat up the cast metal irons. These tools are heated up by the range so that they could be used to iron out clothes. Lastly, while the range is on, you can hang your clothes up after a day of washing. While you cook, the clothes will dry. Next to the range is a very unique tool. This is called the bottle jack. The main body is made of brass, and below is a cast iron hoop with additional hooks. These hooks will be used to hold chunks of meat and spices, to hang above and near the fireplace. Now, the unique part of the bottle jack is that you need a key for it to work. Once you have all your foods out to hang, you would insert the key and begin to turn it. Once it clicks, you then leave the key and watch as the wind-up machinery inside and rotates the lower cast iron parts. This was the best way to slow cook a meal, along with the added spices hanging around the meat. A bottle jack like this, however, wouldn't be found in a working class house. Types like these would be found in a middle class house, whereas a working class house would only have a simple cast iron hanger that wouldn't rotate. Another accessory to the range are these long cast iron prongs. These are different shaped waffle irons. Here you would open up the shaped waffle moulds and pour your mix inside. Then you would keep it tightly shut and next to the fireplace to cook. Close by the table we have the kitchen sink. Unlike our sinks, this one comprises of a large cast iron water pump. Whereas we have easy to use taps, the water pump was the only way to get a large resource of water into the kitchen. In order to get the water, people would have to use a lot of brawn power to move the handle up and down to draw the water from the well. Here would also be the most efficient way to fill up large containers, such as a boiler or a bathtub. Now onto the tools on the countertop. Here we have a lever-controlled slicer. Tools like these are really heavy and will need to be clamped onto the counter side in order for them to keep stable while in use. In order to slice food this way, you would need to first insert the food into the back of the tube and apply pressure to it so it can reach the blade. Once pressure is applied, you push and pull the handle in order to make clean cuts of the food you are pushing through the slicer. Next on the countertop, we have the two meat grinders. Both of these tools have a big similarity as they're both used on meats. Firstly, the one on the right is a mincer. Meat is pressured into the top hole and pushed down while the handle is cranked. As the meat is being pushed inside, you would start to see it pour out of the other end as thin strands of minced meat. The tool on the left is a sausage filler. You would now take your recently minced meat and pressure it into the top hole of the sausage maker. As the meat is pushed into the top, you would now crank the handle so that the meat can pass through and come out the other end as a string of sausages. As you can see, in our time, we can just go to a grocery store and purchase all varieties of meats. For people back then, however, they could only purchase the meat or have their own cattle and then would have to make the rest themselves. Continuing across the countertop, here is a smaller tool known as a nut grinder or spice grinder, again with a similar function of only having to crank the handle at the front. You would place a nut or solid spice on the spherical tip at the back. While you crank the handle, the spherical end would rotate and grind its way through the nut or spice, and it would leave a fine powder being poured onto the surface below. Finally, the last tool on the countertop is the quite unique apple and potato peeler. Here we have managed to restore how this device works. First, you would push the apple or potato onto the sharp 3 prongs at the bottom of the tool. Once placed, you would crank the handle and watch the cogs turn. As the apple or potato would rotate, a knife would also rotate around the food and begin to peel it in a nice, clean and continuous cut. Once the knife has gone all the way around, a small hammer would knock the food off the sharp prongs. This device is one of a kind, as you could simply peel an apple or potato by using a plain knife. However, this is a longer process and can lead to uneven cuts, where you could waste more food cutting the skin off. Here is another unique tool on the countertop. This is known as the knife cleaner. This tool is made from a round drum with a wooden casing. On either side of the drum body is 2 metal framed legs to keep the tool steady and firm while in use. To use this tool, you would first insert a wet knife into one of the holes on the front of the drum. While it's inside the drum, you would crank the handle. Inside the wooden casing is a belt that's wrapped around the inside of the drum. The belt rotates and thrashes around sand that would rub on the wet blade, cleaning off any leftover liquid or food on the blade. Thank you for coming with us on our little journey around a middle-class kitchen. We hope this presentation has taught you about how certain tools work and encouraged you to come and visit the Lincoln Life Museum and experience the exhibit firsthand. Thank you and goodbye.